What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a deep look at the armor system in REDSEC, which I know isn't my primary focus on the channel, but it's something I wanted to include in my gun guides. However, when I included a section talking about armor in my first gun guide episode, I had a lot of people point out that armor is actually reducing the amount of damage that you deal per shot, while also providing a health benefit. And a lot of people link me to another YouTuber named Otter. I will leave a link in the description down below. He had done some basic testing when it comes to this, and I wanted to expand on this a little bit, dive deeper into the testing to share exactly how armor works, and spoiler, it appears to be bugged in many situations. So let's just dive right into this, and it turns out there are actually two different types of armor, and they actually have different characteristics. In Gaunlet, we have soft armor, and this will appear as a white bar, and you can only have one armor plate active at a time in Gaunlet. And the soft armor is actually really straightforward. It just effectively gives you a bonus of 40 HP, and this armor, as far as all of my testing has shown, has no impact on your bullet damage whatsoever. It's literally just a bonus of 40 HP. So that one is super straightforward. However, in Battle Royale, we have a different type of armor with different characteristics, and this is coded as ceramic armor, or it may also be titled as upgraded armor if you're diving deep into the portal stuff. And with this armor, we once again have an additional 40 HP per armor plate, and we can now have up to 2 plates equipped, so that's 80 HP total if you have both armor plates on. However, on top of that, we deal reduced bullet damage to this armor compared to the amount of damage we're dealing to the player's health. So instead of it just being like a flat 80 HP increase when they have 2 plates on, there's more math involved there. You have to also calculate how much damage reduction you're seeing with the gun when hitting those plates. And that damage reduction appears to be quite inconsistent as well. And this is where I think there may be some sort of a bug going on, unless there's something deeper that I was unable to discover with hours and hours of testing. But for those that aren't aware, you can turn on the damage log in-game, and it's kind of annoying to have on your screen all the time, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but for testing purposes, this is excellent because you can see the exact amount of damage I'm receiving per shot that hits me. And something you might find interesting is Battlefield doesn't use integer values for damage. They're all fractional values. So if it says you're dealing like 25 damage, you may actually be dealing 25.09 damage. Or if it says 33 damage in the menus, or when you hit somebody and you see the number 33 pop up, you're actually dealing 33.3 repeating damage, meaning it will be a 3-shot kill against a regular full health enemy at 100 HP, rather than the expected 4-shot kill if it were a flat 33 damage. So with that in mind, I just went into Battle Royale, made sure I played it up, and got myself killed a bunch of times, so I could see exactly how much damage I was receiving to my armor versus my player health. And what I discovered is, in the vast majority of situations, the bullet damage dealt to my armor was between 15 to 25% less than the amount of damage that that same gun in that same situation was able to deal to me. And that is the standard damage value. That's the value you would see in multiplayer, for instance, if there were no armor equipped. So on average, when shooting armor, we're seeing a roughly 20% reduction to the amount of damage you're dealing. So it does actually vary a little bit there, and that variance doesn't seem to follow a consistent pattern that I was able to find. Like, I thought maybe LMGs would lose a little bit less damage compared to SMGs, but nope, that doesn't appear to be the case based on my testing. And just to show you what this looks like in game, in this situation here, we can see the damage values laid out from top to bottom. So the 27.29 damage values we saw for the first 2 bullets, that was damage dealt to my armor. Then we have 1.83 damage dealt, as well as 25.45. That's from the same bullet, but it's separating the amount of damage dealt to the armor versus the amount of damage that shot dealt to my health. And then finally, after that, this is where we start seeing 33.33 damage, which is the standard amount of damage that this gun is expected to deal. He is using the TR7 in this situation. So we can see with that 27.29 damage, this is 18% less damage than what he deals to my health pool. So we're seeing a roughly 18% reduction to bullet damage when shooting armor with the TR7. And this is comparable to the vast majority of situations that I recorded. Generally speaking, this is what you're going to be seeing, a roughly 20% reduction to bullet damage to armor and full damage dealt to player health. However, a really interesting thing to note here as well is with that bullet that breaks your armor, so it's dealing split damage to your armor and your health pool, interestingly, the game calculates and applies the amount of damage dealt to your health before dealing the remaining damage to your armor plate that's breaking in that situation. And that's interesting because that's the opposite of what you would intuitively expect out of that. Normally you'd think you have to break the armor first and then you deal damage to the health. I mean, this does happen so instantly that you'd never really notice outside of situations where you're dealing a massive amount of bullet damage, like a sniper headshot, for instance. if you've got them really low on armor, but they still have a little bit, and you headshot them, you may notice that you get a one-shot kill on them without breaking their armor, even though they had armor. And the reason behind that is it's dealing damage to the health pool first, and in that situation, it's enough to completely eliminate the health pool, and then it would be dealing damage to the armor plate. Realistically, most of the time, this doesn't really mean anything gameplay-wise. It's just a little interesting factor I wanted to point out here. But with all of this, this is sort of the standard behavior of this heavy armor or ceramic armor in Battle Royale. And while it is unnecessarily complicated, in my opinion, if it at least worked like this consistently, it would be easy to calculate a general rule of thumb here, and that would be just treat every armor plate as if it has 50 HP rather than 40. And then you can essentially just ignore the damage reduction to armor when doing that, because they effectively just cancel each other out. Because 40 HP versus 50 is 20% less, just like the roughly 20% less damage we're dealing with our guns. So in the vast majority of situations with guns, if you just pretend the enemy has 50 HP per plate, so a total of 200 HP when they're fully plated up, it's going to take the exact same number of shots to kill versus doing the actual math that's taking place here, which is they actually have 180 HP, but for 80 of that, you're dealing 20% less damage. You can effectively ignore all that as a general rule of thumb. And as a result, in my first gun guide, the values that I stated for the number of shots to kill against armor were actually accurate, but only because I was unaware of the two key factors with armor plates that essentially just cancel each other out anyway. Now, so far up until this point, this is what happens when things are working properly. Unfortunately, I ran into a couple situations where I noticed the enemy was dealing the exact same amount of damage to my armor as they were to my health pool. And that threw everything off here. So in this situation, the enemy is using a cord, and they were dealing 17.76 damage to my armor, as well as 17.76 damage to my player health. You can see after the armor plate broke with that split damage, and if you add up the split damage, it's also 17.76. And the cord is expected to be dealing 20 damage at this range to my body. So he was actually seeing the same reduced damage to my body as he was to my armor plates. And to my knowledge, I didn't have anything special going on with my loadout. I didn't do anything special to make this happen. I think this was just a bug that he ran into where he ended up dealing less damage than he was meant to be dealing to me. Similarly, I ran into this situation right here, and unfortunately I didn't let this guy kill me. I should have, because I didn't get to see exactly which gun he was using. But with this, he was dealing 27.29 damage to my armor, and after the armor broke, 27.2 damage to my body. Now, I don't know if he was dealing full damage in both cases, or reduced damage in both cases, but again, there's another example of him dealing the same amount of damage, regardless of him hitting armor versus health. And interestingly, if we play this clip through, his teammate ended up killing me here, and when it popped up showing like the number of shots it took to kill me, to the body at least, we can see that first player's name pop up, but the gun he was using was actually blurred out. And I don't know if that maybe has something to do with the fact that this is bugged out, or if that's just how it would normally display if that player were down in that moment. But something strange is going on here, and there's definitely some weird inconsistencies. And my first thought was this must be due to ammo type. So I went in, did some tests with various ammo types, especially the tungsten core rounds, because you would think that would penetrate armor better. So perhaps this would allow you to deal full damage to armor. And I was unable to get any sort of consistency here with my results. I was still seeing that same damage reduction, at least appearing on my end when shooting people, and therefore something seems to be bugged out here. And at the end of the day, when it comes to this armor system, my reaction to all of this is, what are they doing here? And why did they have to make everything so overly complex when they could have just given us 50 HP per plate in Battle Royale with no inconsistent damage reduction values here, and then just call it a day? That would be so much easier for the player to understand what's going on and how much damage they're actually dealing. And it would give a whole lot more confidence knowing you're dealing the same amount of damage that you should be dealing every single time, instead of sometimes having something bug out and you're dealing less damage. Or at least I assume this is a bug. If it's not a bug, then their systems are way too complex and they are not explaining it properly, because even after hours of testing, I was unable to replicate these results and figure out why the damage was inconsistent. And inconsistency with damage in an FPS game is a very big problem. So there we go. That's what I found with the armor in Battle Royale. And this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What are your thoughts on all of this? Do you guys like the fact that we see damage reduction with armor plates? Or would you prefer a far more simple system where they increase our armor HP a little bit to compensate for that current damage reduction, and then eliminate damage reduction so there's just consistency on a shot-by-shot basis? Just let me know all of the thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.